Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Welcome back. This is the Blockchain Show. My pleasure to welcome Alex. Alex
Khvatov. The K is silent. Alex Khvatov. Hi. Hi, Ethan.
Hi. If you wouldn't mind saying a little bit about yourself, we can go from there.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm a founder of a startup called DGT Network. We are a layer 1 blockchain. I'm currently calling you from Toronto, Canada. We've been working at it since 2017, currently expanding. We have this unique vision of building a project specifically for centralized enterprises to migrate into the blockchain, into the Web3. And as for myself, originally I am from Russia. I immigrated to Canada when I was 9, went to business school, got a corporate job, did that for a while, didn't really like it. Started a few businesses and then got into blockchain in 2017. Not the earliest time, but it's been quite a while and been quite a journey so far.
Yeah, man. That's got to be hard. That's got to be tough. And
yeah, there have been quite a few waves. That's true.
Yeah, especially right now, it seems like it's just really hard to get people excited about anything in the blockchain space.
Yeah, it's it has been a difficult year. We had a bunch of negative news, and they seem coming from all around. But the thing I remember is that even if we take a look at Luna or Celsius or FTX or all of those other sort of failures that the mainstream media portrays for the entire blockchain or crypto industry, really it's not much different from what happened to, say, banks in 2008 or centralized financial systems. These fails do happen, but just like you, Ethan, I think that the thing to keep in mind is the actual long-term potential of the technology and of the economics it can bring to corporations, to small companies, small businesses, to just regular people. And I think those things are not going away. Of course, this industry is quite new, quite young, and mistakes are being made. I think one of the sort of problems going on right now is a lack of internal controls as well as clear regulation. I know that's one of the issues in the US. It's also a little bit of an issue in Canada as well, where we are located. But the industry will mature, and the benefits really are there to see. It's not the first sort of crash or increase in skepticism. As I said, we've been at it since 2017. So I've been through the whole kind of ICO wave and disappointment there when everyone was saying, oh, crypto's a scam. I've been through the whole kind of up and down of NFT markets as well. Now it's just a kind of a new thing going on with all of these sort of larger exchanges, larger companies making not the best decisions or not having enough oversight. But in reality, I just believe in the technology. I believe in the vision that it can bring. And I think that any setbacks are temporary. I don't think we'll even be seeing the same sort of down market as we saw in 2001 after the dot-com bubble burst. I think it'll be much shorter, and we just see adoption all over the board. We see adoption from governments. We see adoption from corporations. I think that's not going away anytime soon, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good outlook. And you're right. I mean, if you look back the last decade or even the one before that, there was, quite a few successful businesses that rose up that kind of changed things. Thinking about, even, Web 2 type companies. Well, tell me a little bit more about DGT.
Yeah. At DGT, our vision is that there is a lack of basic infrastructure for centralized corporations to join Web3. They can benefit a lot from creating open ecosystems with other companies, from sharing data, from sharing customers, from creating economies of value, just in many use cases across pretty much every industrial sector. However, if they go and take a look at the blockchains available for them now, the blockchains are typically divided into two distinct areas. Either they have to go with a private chain, like IBM or Corda. And IBM is not really decentralized, but for Corda, it only works for sort of constrained ecosystems where participants already trust each other. So banking, medicine, very, very limited use cases. Or companies go towards public chains like Ethereum, Solana, and there's a lot of risk involved there for them. At least that's how they perceive it. It's difficult to integrate to. There are scalability issues, security issues, and hearing about public ledgers where all of your transactions and data will be shared is difficult for them to accept. And I think there has been, I think the survey has been done by Deloitte recently. They said that 94% of Fortune 500 execs are looking for ways to integrate blockchain into their plans, but only about 24% have an actual working product. So for DGT, we decided to address that market. We think that the enterprise market is the biggest wave that is coming for blockchain technology, much bigger than the crypto enthusiasts and metaverse and NFTs or the emerging markets. And we built a network that is hybrid in nature. So it's divided into clusters, and each cluster is its own ecosystem of companies that can modify node rules, transaction types, permissions for joining, while still remaining part of the overall DGT network and being able to integrate into the overall kind of environment. This helps them create open, scalable, growing ecosystems of exchanging value, venturing into a trustless environment of sort, but without losing control and security over their governance. And in addition to that, we built some additional business capabilities. We've built smart contractless tokenization, which is more secure and more flexible. We built embedded decentralized digital identity, oracles in the real world, because it's difficult to talk about tokenization of real world assets if you can't even verify whether those exist and who they belong to. So we kind of try to bring that information on chain as well. And of course, we tried to address interoperability. In 2021, there were 88 new layer 1 blockchains, and this just confuses the market, I think. For us, we tried to make our blockchain interoperable. So our vision is for an enterprise to have a turnkey solution where they come to DGT, whether they want to build an ecosystem or tokenize something. And within a few weeks, they're set up. They do whatever they want in DGT, while at the same time having access to the Ethereum ecosystem, the Binance ecosystem, kind of all of those larger ones as well. So that's mostly what we are doing. Our vision has changed here and there throughout the years. We've done a lot of consulting before, 2018, 2019, 2020, while we were building this product. And some of this consulting work were for quite complex and large organizations. And I think that has really informed our vision of what's lacking there. And we don't believe in the dichotomy of public blockchains versus private blockchains. Neither of those really work realistically for businesses in Web3. So we try to create something in the middle and give businesses some additional tools on that front.
Yeah, it's excellent. I imagine, maybe you can help me out here, but like starting a blockchain nowadays, there's so much more to consider, and addressing the needs of different businesses, even more to consider. And I like the idea that it's not really dependent on one chain or anything like that. But can you walk me through a little bit the technical aspects, just how you're able to provide these services without staying tied down to one chain over another?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're absolutely right. It is difficult to start a new blockchain now, especially one like ours that is trying to be a mature solution for companies to sort of tie into existing business processes. If you take a look at particularly the interoperability aspect, I may even venture to say that there isn't really true interoperability just by the fact that different consensuses are at play, different architectures. You can't directly mirror anything from one blockchain to another. However, we did try to address it through various kind of individual aspects. One thing that we accomplished is to create a relay chain. So we sort of connect networks with each other in a sort of level 0 style, like Cosmos did or Polkadot, where we have different clusters and segments on our chain, and those could be essentially opened by other blockchains. And they could have their own structure, their own consensus models, their own architecture that they have now, while at the same time we provide the kind of ties between different segments and ties to the overall DGT network. So one is a relay chain, and I think in total, I'd name about 5 design patterns that we've done. So the second one would be gateway nodes. So we have special nodes that connect and support two-way communication with external networks. For example, for fiat payments, we are planning to integrate either Stripe or one of their competitors in this way. Third is, of course, virtual machines. And I find that that's the most talked about topic in terms of interoperability recently. We support the EVM machine and WebAssembly virtual machines, pretty much allowing for smart contracts to be transferred to DGT Network. Our fourth way is off-chain oracles. So we support for decentralized identifiers and special nodes called notaries on DGT. They allow for exchange of confidential data or connection to existing ERP systems. And finally, fifth are the token bridges. We build bridges based on relay and sidechains. And I don't really want to get into the technology too much, but if you come for, say, a tokenization product to an enterprise, one of the natural things they ask is, yeah, your tokenization is flexible. We can do this, that, design a token, but where is it going to sell? DGT doesn't have a big marketplace. It's not a well-known layer one company. So we initially, just in the architecture that we have, we try to make sure that if a company comes to us and tokenizes their asset, we can say, yeah, you can tokenize in DGT and have it available both on, say, Binance and Ethereum markets at the same time, instead of going to Ethereum directly and just having it for their markets, or just Binance or Solana or whatever it may be. So in total, these 5 ways, relay chain, gateway nodes, virtual machines, oracles, and token bridges help us link pretty much every aspect that's important to corporations between their existing systems and us, and between us and all of the other sort of layer one networks that we're building towards. We haven't integrated to all of them, of course. We have started with Ethereum and Binance that I mentioned. But we're looking for other networks like Avalanche, Algorand, Solana, whatever it may be, to add to our network quite soon as well. That might have been a bit too of a detailed answer, but I tried to be precise.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's a complicated topic, and nowadays it's even more, I don't know, not really fractured, but it's spreading off in so many different directions so quickly. It's kind of interesting to see how it's all evolving, because back even just 6-7 years ago, there was really only a handful of different chains that I followed, and now there's so many, and I kind of see the future of being not really just one or two being on top, but kind of like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I guess blockchain agnostic, is that still a term? Is that still a thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's still a term. And whatever the term is, we see a lot of experts, both from the centralized community, from the corporate environment, and from the decentralized community, talk about this interoperability as being an important aspect. Of course, the industry is young. I think if we look forward to 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we won't have as many chains. Certain blockchains will emerge as the dominant ones, just because they do better in terms of technology or marketing or whatever it may be. But whatever it is, I think those dominant chains will be interoperable, just because that's necessary for businesses. It's a risk for a business to approach a chain that's not interoperable with others. I mean, if I would be, I don't know, a real estate company that wants to do something on a blockchain, and I go to January 2022 and I decide to launch on Terra, and then things happen in about a month, of course, that's something that's a bit of an additional risk, in addition to kind of understanding the technology, integrating it well, and using it. So yeah, I believe that in maybe not 3 or 5, but say 5 or 7 years, there will be about 8 or 10 dominant blockchains, and that to one degree or another, they will be interoperable with each other or with corporate systems. Yeah, some of it may be called blockchain agnostic, some of it may be called something else, but it's definitely an important concept. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I often wonder in the future, when they look back at this time, are they going to be able to see exactly what we were doing as a human species? Because if you look back to antiquity, not much survives, like maybe stuff chiseled into stone, or big megalithic structures. Assuming the internet is still around in 100, 500 years, hopefully we're still here. It's going to be kind of an incredible amount of data. It's not completely anonymous. You can kind of see on most chains where things are going.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's going to be kind of like investigative historians who have a computer background that can go back and trace the origins of these different chains and see kind of where humanity was putting its efforts and the time. So just kind of a thought I had recently about where all this is heading.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like your point about anonymity because a lot of people, they just assume blockchain, Bitcoin, anonymous, but that's not how it works, especially now that the industry has matured. If you go to a crypto exchange and you register your wallet and you show them your ID as part of a KYC procedure, that's it. There is some information tying you as a person directly to that wallet address. And then you can do some investigations in terms of where the money are being transferred or what's happening. I think another use case that's pertinent to us at DGT as a startup is we are planning to launch our own native cryptocurrency, our own native coin in Q1 of next year. And we have some distributions of that coin planned in terms of the core team, in terms of the advisors. Even if you don't have identities tied to the wallets, just by the sums of the coins of the tokens being distributed, you can easily tie, oh, that's probably a founder that has been there for 4 years. Well, this is probably that advisor that has just joined 3 months ago and they have less of a stake. And from there, you can go on and identify pretty much everything else. But going far into the future, I think a lot of the information will survive one way or another. We have a lot of backups in terms of where this information is being stored, both in terms of the chains and in terms of internet. So yeah, I think the visibility of us as a species and us as people for any future generation is hard to overestimate and frankly quite hard to imagine even. I think for me, my parents are very interested in building sort of a family tree in terms of our ancestors. And I know how difficult it is for them to try to build out individual branches, to call individual kind of small churches in Russia, because they're the ones that held this information before. Some of them burned down, some of them are there, some of them have paper records. They've done quite an extraordinary job, my parents, in tracking down kind of the past relatives, but they can only go so far, like great grandpa, that's it. If you look at a person that's living 500 years from now, I think that lineage will be first of all much more easier to establish, and at the same time they'll be able to look at their great grandpa when he was, I don't know, 16, posting on whatever social network it is, his party pictures or whatever else. I think they'll have much more access to that information, and much more access to the accomplishments of humans that they're doing right now too, with blockchains and with pretty much everything else. I don't think the amount of data will be an issue because of it not really being an issue right now. There are solutions being worked on in terms of artificial intelligence, big data, blockchain in particular, that help kind of sift through the mess. And yeah, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but I think the current day will definitely be visible 500 years from now, at least. That's my belief.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, my father is into that as well, genealogy. And like you said, yeah, we went to some churches, some government buildings, and tried to get as much information as we could. But really, we weren't aristocrats or royalty, so there's not a whole lot of paper trail. So that's an interesting use case that I didn't really think about.
Yeah, exactly. And in USSR, where my family is from, it was not a popular topic to really think about where you came from. And because what if you came from someone who was a royalist or someone who was not one of the best kind of people according to the USSR government? So people preferred not to know and not to ask those questions. And that led to many records being lost and burned. And I think that in addition to information being visible from now, it's already quite hard to hide information, and it's going to get even harder if you move forward. Especially with blockchain, perhaps, because it is decentralized, and just like the internet, once something is on there, it's difficult to erase.
Yeah, it brings up some of the unintended consequences, because you never really know what's going to happen politically around the world. And although this technology can help people tremendously, like you said, once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah,
and it's kind of been interesting to see some of the privacy projects that have emerged to try to make it more anonymous through different methods. Be interesting to see where that goes. It seems like in general, the public doesn't really, I don't know if they don't care or it's just too much of a hassle, but I know even myself at times, I just know, like, if I'm doing anything online, it's going to, it's a possibility of it being viewed by other people in positions of power is a possibility, which, kind of sucks, but the trade-off is it makes life a lot easier. But what are your thoughts about privacy and, some of these techniques to try to shield people's identity, in Web3?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that, first of all, people don't even realize how much they're being analyzed by corporations, by their digital trail online. And I'm usually, well, practically I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but but I know of a lot of products and projects done by Google's, by Facebook's, by weird governments around the world in terms of tracking their citizens, in terms of not just tracking, but really influencing the thought patterns, their purchasing patterns, the behaviors of people, and how easy there is to do if you put a lot of data together. So that is quite concerning. In terms of the blockchain, initially, Bitcoin had this sort of anarchist feel in terms of being private and confidential, but now there is this sort of a paradox, I would say, where on one hand, we talk about confidentiality and blockchain being anonymous. On the other hand, there are so many solutions around digital identity, as you mentioned. And so for corporations, even any one company that tries to use blockchain to sort of amass customer data, they have to balance those things out in some proportion. They have to have some degree of identity to make data meaningful, essentially, for it to have value, for it to be tied to, oh, this demographic is interested in this product, or we can cross-sell this or that. But at the same time, as you probably know, the laws are fairly strict in terms of what information can be shared, what can be exchanged. So there is a big pressure on confidentiality as well. And I think this industry will grow a lot. Honestly, from our point of view at DGT, we don't really see a lot of solutions that are being developed in terms of managing that conflict between confidentiality and identity quite well, because a lot of those solutions out there that are focused on identity, they're quite developed, but they're standalone, like Sovereign, for example. They have their own great thing, but if you want to actually use Sovereign and be on a blockchain, then you have to pay for every transaction to be kind of identity checked, and it raises the cost, and you can't really do much about it. So for DGT, we decided to build sort of an embedded mechanism to manage privacy and identity. We have our own set of methods based on zero knowledge proof and secure multi-party computation methods. All of those fancy terms, but essentially what we try to enable is for companies to be able to create ecosystems where they have shared data around common customers, but the data isn't really shared between them. The analysis based on the data is. So even though they sort of pool together the information about their customers, really they don't have access to it, and it's all legal, and you have basically AI working on providing the insight. One of those interesting projects in that regard is called, just the direction is called marketing attribution. So if you have, for example, a bank sharing data about customers where it knows your spending habits and your transactions, and then you have a telecom company that knows your movement by GPS in your phone, and then you have a social media company that knows what you like and what you basically see for the entirety of the day. So if legally and probably ethically, you can't really put that data together. But using blockchain, using zero knowledge proof and other methods, for example, like the ones we have, you can provide the insight based on the data being pooled without actually pooling the information underneath. We can have a product where, say, if you want to open a lighting store in a small town, you can come to DGT for this data. Let's say we already have a bank, a telecom company, and a social media, and we can give you a percentage score of how likely you are to succeed, because we know approximate traffic in the area, we know the spending habits, we know what people look for, we know some hidden undercover patterns, and we can tell you with a degree of certainty that yes, here you will succeed with 84%, while if you move to a town nearby, you won't succeed at all because, I don't know, no one cares, no one buys those products there, and so forth. So we can really provide that insight, but at the same time protect the customers underneath. I think that's one of the promises that blockchain brings. I think a lot of the companies are not there yet, and it also feeds into this sort of private-public dichotomy that I mentioned before. A lot of the blockchains that are out there, they emerge from a fully or not fully, but fully decentralized or completely not decentralized paradigms. They emerged to facilitate NFTs, marketplaces, metaverses. While we don't really have a solution that really looks at those issues concretely and provides a solution for corporations to join, and I think DGT is trying to kind of plug that niche. Sorry for the shameless plug myself, but I think we're not the only ones doing it. I think a solution will be out there that does manage confidentiality and identity to some degree, because you need both in this world to legally operate and bring some value.
Yeah, definitely a lot to navigate. You mentioned helping some of these companies bridge the gap between public-private blockchains and some of the powerful tools they can get out of it. It seems like, large corporations, they have the resources. They can pretty much do anything. So I like the ability for other people starting a company or not having a massive company, still having access to these tools. So
exactly. And that's what Web3 is about. It's about the smaller businesses. It's about just people getting more access to data, to creating their own financial ecosystems, to create their own value propositions that before were tied down in the hands of the Googles, the Facebooks of the world. And that's one of the promises that we want to bring there as well. We think that before the entirety of Web3 becomes P2P and completely decentralized, there is this middle step where we allow businesses of some sort to basically create themselves and prosper and get access to those opportunities that are not available to them right now.
Yeah, and earlier I was mentioning governments, but you're right. You bring up, giant corporations can be just as troublesome, and it oftentimes can kind of work with governments to circumvent laws. At least the US government can't come out and outright ban free speech, at least not easily, but it's certainly a lot easier to have a private corporation, by their rules do that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And the power they amassed is bigger than governments. We saw that in the Arab Spring, the role that Twitter played in starting that whole thing. I mean, that toppled some governments as well. So, and at the same time, those corporations, they aren't under the same democratic purviews as most governments are. And for me, what's scary about them isn't really the explicit policies they have or even some political leanings that they might have. It's more of their implicit power to really influence behavior and thoughts of a large population. That's a scary thought, and I'm glad that blockchain projects are out there right now trying to shift this balance of power to a more equitable society, rather than have one Elon Musk who decides this or that without really any oversight.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about him. I want to like the guy, and most of the time I do, but just hope he has the best intentions.
Yeah, exactly. And even if he does, and I believe he probably does, and I respect a lot of the things that he has done, still, that's a bit too much power for one guy who was not elected, who's not really accountable in many ways. He might have some intentions now that are good and for the benefit of everyone, but at the same time have different intentions tomorrow. Or maybe there is not just Elon Musk, maybe there are a bunch of people that I don't believe necessarily meet in closed rooms, and they don't really need to. They have these massive corporations, and the decisions they make just affect everyone in a tremendous way. And I think a lot of the population isn't really noticing how much power those corporations wield over just the thoughts that we all have. And again, it's not a matter of conspiracy theorists or of evil men doing evil things. It's more of a matter of really the technology that they have, the size that they have, and the profit motives and the drives that they have. Whatever happens with DGT and whatever clients we may get, I'm a big believer in the Web3 movement and the ideology as a whole, for it to be more democratized, for smaller folk to have more access to data, more access to business opportunities than they do now. And for breaking up some of those monopolies or oligopolies that are happening in the tech world.
I try to look at it from some of these big companies, their perspective. they all started out small, one or two guys, and they probably never imagined it would have grew to what it grew into. And then so many challenges of, all of a sudden you have millions and millions of people that you're trying to accommodate. And then you have shareholders, and like that's no position I'd ever want to be in. It just kind of turns into a monster pretty quickly. I don't know. I much prefer the ethos of Web3 and decentralization. Hopefully we can get there to where a lot of these applications we use online are more in line with that.
Yeah, exactly. And if we grow at DGT and we become this big successful story, it won't be a large corporation with shareholders and direct fiscal responsibility to maximize profits at any cost. I think it will be more of a actual large decentralized network of different ecosystems, many different participants out there, all having a say in the governance of the overall network. And I think that's a much healthier business model and a much healthier economic and social model for us to move towards. Even if we are successful as a company and as a business, it's just better governance, I think.
Yeah, man. I got to hand it to you. I can't imagine how difficult it must be doing a startup right now. I mean, I was thinking about selling t-shirts for the podcast, and I eventually thought, I don't know if I can handle that. So tell me about some of your challenges and, a little bit about your daily life. Like, how are you making it work?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is really not as glamorous as people make it out to be. And I think there's a growing realization of that for the general public as well, that it's not only about not having a boss or earning tons of cash or whatever the perception is. And it's a lot of hard work and grinding and really overcoming not just the external difficulties, but some psychological difficulties as well that come with the journey. And with each time when the ICOs crashed, when other expectations crash on the market, when the funding environment gets tougher like it is now, of course, that adds to the pressure of both the responsibility that I feel for the team and the company, and in terms of kind of my own sort of state, kind of mentally about those things and the way I think about it. But in the end, I'm a strong believer in the industry and the market and where it's growing. And I'm a strong believer in the sort of value that DGT is bringing and how it's aligned to that vision of the world that's coming to pass. I see a lot of really positive signs in terms of blockchain adoption, in terms of how it's being used, in terms of more corporations coming in and using it wisely. So those things really, really help me keep grounded and really help me to continue believing in what I do, and thus put in the hours and the effort, no matter the risks inherent in any business, but especially in such a wild ride as blockchains and crypto is.
Definitely still an exciting time, and I'm glad that you could come on today and talk about some of these bigger issues affecting the space, maybe kind of help people think outside of just prices right now, because I'm sure a lot of people are hurting right now if they got into this just to make a quick buck.
Yeah, I know of a guy I spoke to recently. He wasn't really into crypto and he doesn't really know much about crypto, but he started investing. And he invested on the FTX exchange, and then there we go. What's happening now is quite an issue for him. But I think that's still more of an issue of individual projects, and I think that overall, just the scale of benefits a blockchain can bring is still there, and it's gonna face better and increased adoption by governments and companies going forward. For the markets, it's a difficult time, but it's a difficult time for all markets. If you have a recession in a centralized world, no one's asking, well, do we need banks really? Banks exist nevertheless, and they provide whatever services they need. Maybe there are a lot of problems in the banking industry, but it's a mature industry that doesn't fail just based out of any one recession. And I think we're coming to that future for blockchain as well, that even if there is less spending going on, even if there is less investment, it's just going to be a big force in terms of how the future of business is shaped, nevertheless. hopefully we can look back at today in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and think of it as an exciting time of opportunity that was stressful, that was ambiguous, that was uncertain, but that was really the best time to create and build something new. And I think that's what it is right now.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that perspective. I kind of view it as a course correction. It's kind of like when money or interest rates are low, people act a little irresponsibly, buy houses and cars that they probably can't afford. Yeah. And I don't know if there's a parallel in blockchain. Hopefully some better projects will emerge that can stand the test of time, but it's still pretty young industry relatively.
It's still pretty young. And I think the best alternative, the best comparison to make is the amount of investments that we saw in the industry in 2021 and early 2022. While of course I'm all for investments into blockchain, a lot of decisions I think being made by VCs at that point were not in line with the actual business value of the projects they were investing in, and they really wanted to get into the industry and have some stake in the blockchain world, and I think that's understandable. But now that there are more projects available, and now that we see a lot of failures coming from projects who were not thought out enough or not controlled enough or didn't have enough regulation, we see a big correction in the venture capital market, which makes it difficult to fundraise for a startup like DGT. But long term, I think it's a healthy thing for the industry to grow up and mature.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with, kind of in closing here? Just kind of want to give you the floor for any last thoughts.
I think the closing thing I would like to say is don't get discouraged by the market, by the recession, by the crypto skeptics out there. Whether you want to invest in some crypto, or you want to start a project or build something, or you want to participate in the blockchain, if you're a company or if you're an individual, whatever it may be, I think with proper research, with proper motivation, I think it's still a land of massive opportunity, perhaps unparalleled in any other sector right now. And recessions, they come and go, but blockchain is here to stay. And even if that thought is a little banal, I think it bears repeating that there's the benefits of blockchain are tremendous. And if you want to take part in this industry in whatever way, I would encourage you to start doing that now for anyone listening.
Yeah, very good. What's the website or the best way people can get involved with DGT?
Yeah, if you want to tokenize assets, if you want to build an ecosystem with other small, large, medium-sized businesses, whatever it may be, or you just want to learn more about blockchain applications for businesses, you're welcome to reach out to us. That's dgt.world. We have our email address there. You can reach out to me directly, alex@dgt.world. We are happy to answer any inquiry and talk to you about your needs. So please visit us and read more about us and about blockchain. We're always welcoming new folks to the industry.
Well, very good. Alex, I really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best.
It has been a pleasure, Ethan. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.